Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Tonight, we're talking about sumo. So, for all you sumo fans out there, we hope we're going to convert some people to like sumo after listening to us. I was a jet in Awita, and I know you were a jet as well.
I
And
was.
that was the first time I went to a sumo tournament in person. And of course, now during coronavirus, a lot of people can't go to sumo tournament. It's a really different when you can only watch it on TV, but of course, you really help bring the atmosphere fear to people while you're narrating and commenting.
Mm.
So, thank you so much for what you do and for joining
Oh,
today.
absolutely. Good and nice to be here. I hope we have a fun conversation.
I hope so too. Tell those people watching, it looks like we have a few now. If you're on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube, make sure you write your questions and comments and we'll try to fit them in, okay? All right. Can you start by just briefly introducing yourself?
Sure. So my name is Jason, and I have a fairly well-liked sumo channel on YouTube. I'm gonna just put it right up there, Jason's Sumo channel,
Awesome.
and it started I started filming sumo back in about 2008. As Joy mentioned, I was a jet. I was living in Shimane-ken. There wasn't much on my television. This was pre-Netflix, pre any kind of cable service way out where I was living in the Naka in the countryside. And but I could get NHK and I could watch sumo. And the magic bonus is if you speak English, there's a button on your remote control you can push, and it will be in English for 2 hours every day from 4 to 6 p.m. And so I would come home from school teaching and just plop on the couch, and it was a source of watching something in English. And then I finished my jet after 5 years, went home to America, came back, and some of my sumo videos were some of the most popular videos on my then channel that talked about life in Japan. So I said, well, why don't I just start a whole channel that's about sumo? And that was 10 years ago now. And it's grown slowly. For the first 5 years, I would say I had maybe less than 10,000 subscribers. But in the past 5 years, it's exploded. I'm now up to almost 60,000 subscribers, over 26 million views. And a lot of that is people that don't live in Japan, obviously, don't have any access to watch sumo. Um, and so they go to YouTube, and I offer it in English. And I kind of curate the videos I show. I don't show everything from each day. And people seem to enjoy it.
Awesome. So,
Yeah.
so you get the feeling that most of your fans are people that have never seen sumo live. How
Oh,
did they
absolutely.
how did they discover sumo? Through
Yeah,
just seeking it
it's
out?
weird. Certainly about 3 years ago, there was a European wrestler named Tochinoshin, who's from Georgia, not Georgia in America, but Georgia in Europe. And he attained the second highest rank in sumo named Ozeki. And for some reason, a video I made of a match with him, he's a big, video game creation looking guy, muscular, not just kind of fat and what you think of as a sumo wrestler. And he's, for lack of a better term, white. And he was fighting a fairly small Japanese wrestler in that particular match. And it went viral. It got like 3 million views, and I think it was posted. So a lot of people just, what's this weird thing? And the thumbnail was great. And, uh, and they stuck around because the channel has so much that you can watch from the past. And then, of course, I post every day during a tournament. So if you didn't just think, oh, who are these big guys in diapers hitting each other, and you have a little bit more sensitivity than that. A lot of people are intrigued and they just stumble upon it. And I get a lot though of comments from people who have lived in Japan, who were in the military or did jet or for whatever and they're like, "Oh, I discovered your channel. I used to watch sumo back in the 80s, the 90s, the 10s, and it's great to watch it again." So a lot of that's my audience. A lot of my audience is in Mongolia, places where sumo wrestlers are from, but maybe they don't have access to NHK. So yeah, it's a really interesting mixed bag of folks.
Wow, that's interesting. It's fascinating to me that people can find out about and get really into sumo without ever seeing it live. But I think it has that kind of intrigue, right? Like
Yeah.
big guys, big strong guys pushing each other out of the ring. So before we dive into other things, can you just like imagine taking a first timer
Mm,
to a sumo tournament?
mm.
How would you prepare them? What would you say to get them ready to understand what they're going to see?
Um, well, often people ask me to compare sumo to other sports, etc., and I guess the only thing I feel like is somewhat analogous uh, is tennis. And this sounds weird, but if you bear with me for a moment, a sumo tournament, which is called a basho, lasts 15 days, and the fighters have to fight every day of those 15 days. So the matches last relatively very short amount of time, sometimes 5 seconds, 10 seconds. It's rare for a sumo match to last a minute. So they're not doing a whole lot of work, but they do have to come back every day. And the goal is to win 8 or more matches out of those 15. Okay. So I feel like and it's one on one, right? It's mano y mano. It's one guy against another guy. They probably fought before. There's tactics. There's strategy. Is he doing all right? Oh, is his leg hurt? Is whatever, whatever, whatever. And I feel like that's a little like tennis, where they face off and then they're kind of eliminated as they go, but they have to persevere and get to the championship match. And here they're not eliminated if they lose, but obviously they're trying to win the championship of that particular tournament, and for that you have to have a high rate of wins versus losses. So I feel like and tennis is generally one on one, but of course tennis matches can last 5 hours. It's ridiculous. So so it's not the same there, but there really is no other sport in sort of normal sports, your basketball, your soccer, your football, your baseball, that it's anything like. There's Olympic sports that it's similar to, but so I guess I would prepare people by saying you're going to see very large men who, on the surface, you would say are fat or overweight, and they are, but below that, because these are generally young guys in their 20s, some in their 30s, there's a whole lot of muscle. And part of the reason that they are so heavy is that, as everyone knows, muscle weighs more than fat. And these guys, you wouldn't want to just underestimate them and say, "Oh, he's just a fat, squishy ball." Um, so Japanese people for centuries were not huge on the average, right? So for a while, I think it was like, wow, this one child from this one village is now 6 foot tall, 180 centimeters or whatever. What an anomaly. And so they would pit him against another really large person from another village and blah, blah, blah. And now, of course, we do have large Japanese kids. The diets changed and things like that. But some of the dominant sumo wrestlers from the past decade have been from Mongolia and in Europe and some other places. So it's an interesting international mix nowadays. It's not just Japanese guys, and I don't know how to prepare them. You're gonna see guys rush at each other really fast, hit each other really fast, but then there is skill, there is technique. It's not just brute force by any means, and all I can say is that the first time you watch it, it's the spectacle of it all. It's the rice throwing, the stomping, the cheering when we had fans, all that stuff. The gyoji and their amazing kimono, the judges, the hairstyle, everything. The guys in just the little mawashi belts. But after you watch it for a little while, and this is probably why the channel is popular, you do understand. Oh, he used that technique to win that match. Oh, he understood to throw him like that, or it's a lot. These guys are really skilled athletes, and I certainly appreciate that a lot about watching the sport. and that's why I've probably become such a big fan over the years.
Yeah, awesome. One thing you said, which I found really interesting, which I didn't realize, is a lot of them have wrestled each other a lot before. Is that because they train together, or just in the tournaments they've wrestled each other before?
Yeah, so a little bit of both. So let's talk pre-COVID. Okay, so pre-COVID, say a year ago, there's 6 Honbasho a year, so 6 official tournaments every odd-numbered month. And then in between that, depending on what time of year it is, the weather, these guys would get in a bus and drive to various little out of the way places all over Japan and have 1 day little tournaments where you could pay maybe a little less money and go sit in a gym somewhere and watch your favorite sumo wrestler. Um, and since 3 of the tournaments are in Tokyo, one's in Osaka, one's in Nagoya, one's in Fukuoka, there's a whole lot of Japan that doesn't cover. So these guys wrestled a lot, and they do wrestle the same kind of top tier echelon guys uh, over and over. And then you're right, some of them are together in a what's called a sumo stable, and they'll wrestle each other all the time for practice, or their stable will visit another stable. So generally, and even coming up through the ranks, there's 6 levels of sumo. There's the top kind of premier division, if you want, and the second tier and third tier. They may have wrestled each other on the way up, and now they're in the top tier and they're facing off again. And so to beat somebody that you've maybe wrestled 15, 20 times, uh, you kind of know their moves and how they're going to come at you. And so it takes strategy. What should I try this time? Is he feeling well? Is he having a good tournament? I'm having a good tournament. I'm going to beat him to crap. And so uh, you know and they're interesting. There are guys that have fought Hakuho, the grand Michael Jordan of sumo, 20, 30, 40 times and never beaten him. And psychologically what that must do to you, I can't even imagine.
Let's talk about Hakuho for a minute, because I've got your tweet here. And you say, we've been incredibly lucky in the past decade to see the reign of the greatest Yokozuna of all time, Hakuho. He really
Absolutely.
never had a consistently strong rival after Asashoryu
Mm.
retired. Many others did win Yusho, and it will be hard to see him go as we wait for the next big thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So Hakuho is a Mongolian. He came along, I started watching in 2004, but really didn't get into it until 2005. And he came along around that same time. There was a Mongolian Yokozuna at that time named Asashoryu. Uh, and they were just both fierce competitors, different body types, different attitudes. So it was an interesting rivalry. And Hakuo is a big fella, there's no doubt about it. I think he's 190 centimeters, and he wrestles at say 150, 155 kg, and he just did his homework. He was a small kid when he was a teenager. He put on the weight. He learned the techniques, and he became a yokozuna, which is the top uh, rank in sumo. And him and Asashoryu had a great 3 years where they could fight each other at that level, and then other people would come in and try to take a tournament from them. And then unfortunately, Asashoryu had to retire. And he's had some other good rivalries, but nothing that's really tested his mettle as much as we had maybe hoped. But he has broken every single record, wins, number of wins, consecutive wins, wins in one calendar year. Um, Absolutely crushed. The highest number of total championships won by a grand champion was 32, and Hakuo is currently at 44. Yeah. So yeah. Well, I think he probably said that about a year ago when, it was pre-COVID. He's had some surgeries recently. He's getting older. He's 30. See, I always hate when I have to say these things on a podcast or something because I always get it wrong. I want to say he's 35, maybe almost 36, which for a sumo wrestler is old. Um, and he really wanted to be the Yokozuna when the Olympics happened this summer, and we know they didn't happen. And I think he's holding on, hoping that they happen next summer, and he can somehow be involved in the opening ceremony and be kind of on uh, represent Japan. He has become a Japanese citizen. He will stay in Japan after he retires. He's married to a Japanese woman. He has children here, and he will become a coach, an oyakata, for a stable after he retires. But 50 now with his condition and some of the strong guys coming up. 45, absolutely. He'll get to 45. He only has to win one more. But that extra five, I doubt it.
Is sumo at all influenced by outside forces like World Federation Wrestling, where they kind of decide who might win this bout, or, oh, he's really near 50. Oh, maybe we'll just give it to him, or.
Um, people sometimes during my commentary on my channel and stuff, I've been labeled a little bit naive about the machinations of what happens in matches, and there was back in 2011, around the time we had that terrible tsunami in Japan. There was a basho that was canceled because of match fixing, but it wasn't any of the top tier Yokozuna Ozeki. It was what happens. See, is there's guys in the top division and the second tier. If you're below the second tier, you're not a salaried wrestler anymore. You're not a rikishi or a sekitori. I'm sorry, you're not a sekitori, you're a rikishi. So the difference between getting a winning record and keeping in that top, that second tier or that top tier division to your livelihood and the privileges you get versus going down to the third tier is a big deal. And so they found that there were guys who were like, okay, I'm 7-7. I need to be 8-7 to have a winning record. If you help me win tomorrow, I'll do the same for you. And they were texting each other on their cell phones like idiots, and they got caught. So does a little bit of that go on? Probably. Not too much in the top divisions. It's very dog eat dog, and I think the guys really do go after each other with gusto and zeal. Um, there's certainly politics and how much the federation sort of favors Japanese-born rikishi because they want a Japanese champion. Currently, there is not a Japanese yokozuna. Um, the other yokozuna, other than Hakuho, is a man named Kakuru, and he's also from Mongolia. So I don't think too much of that. Okay, you're the heel, you're going to be this, or you're going to, be the villain this time, and I don't think that really does happen. Maybe I'm naive, but I think the sport is pure competition at the highest level.
That's awesome. And very interesting. One of the things I saw on NHK World, or NHK has such great information about all the
They
different
do,
wrestlers and everything.
yeah,
And they have the profiles, which I'm showing right now. Asa no Yama is always smiling in his photos, which I love. Uh,
yeah,
and then they show country and they talk about the meaning of their names,
sure,
which I love and is a cultural reference. Another thing which I really like, which is kind of related to the destinations or the companies that sponsor them, is their kesho mawashi.
uh-huh. There's
Can you?
ceremonial aprons, yeah,
Yeah. So they're so colorful. I'll show a picture. You often collaborate with Big Sumo Fan. What's the name? BigSumoFan.com.
.com,
And
yeah.
he has poster, which I'm showing now, all the beautiful Keisho Mawashi. So a lot of people who've never seen sumo tournament might not know all the ceremony, all the different parts, not just the bout, right?
Right.
Can you explain a bit about when someone might see these kind of aprons, keisho mawashi?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So, yeah, if you're gonna go see live sumo, Uh, obviously, if you can endure many, many hours, go as early as you can. But the matches, generally in the top division, which is the most talented, skillful guys, happen from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. About it always tries to end by 6 p.m. So if you can get there about 3 p.m., take your seat, buy some souvenirs, get something to eat, get your seat. You'll see the ring entering ceremony, the dohyo iri, uh, where all the wrestlers, there's about 40 in the top division, will walk out in these keisho mawashi, which are, if you've just shown a picture, the people know what they look like. Um, and yeah, they can have these lovely scenes of their hometown. Sometimes there's some somewhat comedic. Sometimes they have like an amazing eagle or phoenix or some creature on them, dragons. Um, and they walk around the ring and they say a few things and they throw their hands up in the air and they pull up their mawashi and then they walk out. And it's kind of fun. You get to see a lot of butts. Uh, and they do it from both sides, the east and the west. So you get to see it a couple times. And then if a Yokozuna is present in the tournament, he'll come out and do a smaller version of that where he has a very large ceremonial mawashi on with two attendants. One is holding a sword, and another one's holding what is the other guy holding? I can't remember. And he does some foot stomping, and the crowd kind of cheer him on. And that's his own little yokozuna ceremony because that's his privilege as being the grand champion. And that all happens right before the very first match of the first half of action. So 3:45-ish, 3:50 most days on a sumo day. So definitely don't get there late. Go and see that because that's a lot of fun. And at the very, very end, after the final match, there's a guy that comes out with this bow and he twirls it all over his head. It's amazing. And he then stomps his foot in the crowd. They're not supposed to now because of COVID. They're not supposed to shout, but generally they'll go, like "Yusha," or they'll kind of just jump in with him and shout some kind of encouragement, and that's to kind of end the day. And so yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff like that all throughout, and the Yobidashi yelling out the names or singing the names of each wrestler in this sort of very interesting traditional way and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, awesome. Um, Joan has a comment for us.
Okay,
She says, "Sumo, big fan here. Is Jason located in Japan? Late to the broadcast."
sure. Yeah, so I started out, like I said, I was a teacher, came over on the JET program in a very rural part of Japan called Shimane Prefecture. Um, and because I didn't have a lot to do, watched sumo and went to see it live after I'd lived here about a year in Fukuoka, which is near Shimane. That's one of the benefits of having one down there in November. Um, got hooked and now live in a different part of Japan. Still in there's the main island of Honshu. I kind of live in the southwestern part of that island, and I've been here almost 15 years now. Yeah.
Yeah. And we were talking before about my first experience at a sumo tournament, and I saw Konishiki, and I'm from Hawaii, so it was really exciting. Konishiki and
Yeah.
Akebono, and because he was Yokozuna, he came out and did that big ceremonious kind of warm up and clapped his hands, and everyone
Yeah.
shouted, and really
Those
exciting.
those two guys are monster big too. You don't you It's interesting to get scale because I'm a big guy. I'm 6 foot. I'm 170 kg, but these guys are really really large sometimes. And Konishiki and Akebono were both really big men,
Big guys. And
and
then
it's fun to see them.
they would invite kids out, little kids who are practicing sumo. And Akebono or Kunishiki would just like touch their heads and they would try to tackle them. And that was part of the day if you went early.
Yeah,
I love that. That was so fun.
yeah.
Puffy Shirt says, for Jason, do all sumo wrestlers need to follow Shinto religion?
No, no, not at all. There's quite a few sumo wrestlers who are not Japanese. They obviously have to learn to speak Japanese, and they have to live in kind of almost like a dorm-like conditions at their stable, sleeping on futons next to the next guy until they get up to the status of a higher rank wrestler. But Shinto, while there's Shinto artifacts and echoes throughout modern sumo in the way the guys dress and the throwing of the salt and the ceremonies they do. It's a lot of it is based on Shinto. The roof that hangs over the dohyo, the tassels that are hanging down. But no, I think that's all the trappings of why the sport feels so Japanese to people and so significant to Japanese people. But no, you can enjoy it, participate, and you don't really have to know much about that at all.
So
They
there's
might be asked to go to shrines.
yeah, and there's it's more ceremonious than religious, right? It
Absolutely. Yeah,
seems
yeah.
that way, but they do still not allow women to enter the ring, right?
True. That's true. They're not allowed to, yeah, step foot on the raised clay, which is ridiculous and
There must have
outdated.
been a time when foreigners were also not allowed, but now so many foreigner wrestlers have become so good at
Well,
the
the funny
sport.
thing was, I don't know if you remember, but about a year ago, and it seems like it was forever ago, Donald Trump visited Japan and he wanted to go to sumo. And he asked for all these strange, like, requests. And he wanted to go up onto the dohyo and give a cup to the winner, who ended up being Asanoyama that tournament in his very first win. But he didn't want to wear slippers because in Japan you can't wear your shoes on the dohyo. So but he wouldn't take his shoes off. How he survived in Japan not wanting to take his shoes off, I'll never know. So they had to like lay down like carpet and give him this special thing that he could walk up, and it was so ridiculous. But yeah, they'll bend their rules, but maybe they don't break them.
Right, yeah. Joan says, jealous. That is the one place we have not seen sumo. Hope to soon. Are you talking about Kyushu, maybe?
Maybe she's
Uh,
talking to Keisha.
talking about where you can get tickets. You recently tweeted about you couldn't get tickets in Tokyo, so you're going to Kobe, Osaka. Is that right?
Oh. So what's happened this year after they canceled the May tournament because of COVID? Um, they held the March tournament, which is in Osaka, but with no fans. And then for the rest of the year, the July tournament, September and November, they said, instead of having the wrestlers have to travel to Nagoya, to Fukuoka, we're just going to have all the tournaments in Tokyo. And they've been trying to decide, well, how many people can we let in? The Kokugikan, the place in Tokyo, the sumo arena, holds about 11,000 fans. And so they said, okay, well, we're going to let in 2,500, about 25%, right? But Japan in general has been doing well with COVID, and they're upping the amount that they let into baseball stadiums, et cetera. So in November, I think they're thinking of doubling that number to 5,000. And so they were really taking a long time to put the tickets on sale. And I wanted to make plans. I'm a teacher. I kind of have to know where I'm going to be. And I was like, I can't go see sumo. They still haven't even put the tickets on sale. I'm going to go to Kobe instead and just get out of my hometown and, go do something because I haven't traveled at all in 2020, you know. And so no, I'm not going to see sumo in Kobe. I'm just going to go meet friends and have fun, and oddly enough, eat Brazilian food, which I love to do in Kobe. But yeah, Tokyo. Normally it'd be in Fukuoka in November, but it's been canceled for Fukuoka and moved to Tokyo. But I'll go see sumo in 2021.
Yeah.
It'll start to get better.
Well, you were talking, I think, on Twitter or on your one of your YouTube videos about how because it's 25% capacity now, you can actually get some good deals. Like
Yeah.
you can actually get a box to yourself for a discount price. Can you talk about
Yeah,
that?
I'm not exactly sure what the price are. My guess is it's Ichiman, 10,000 yen, which, rough conversion $100. And that box would normally, you're supposed to have 4 people in it, so it's 4 mon and about $400 for that same little bit of real estate inside the arena. Um, so that's great. If you can sit there, you have to sit there by yourself. You can only talk to yourself. But maybe you can have your friend in the box next to you if you can arrange it that way. And I think at first they weren't selling. The weekends are always going to sell out, the beginning and the end of the tournament. But some of those days, like on a Thursday, they weren't selling out. And I think the reason is people were a little hesitant to go. As is natural. Some people don't want to be in a large arena with other people, even if everybody's wearing a mask. And to be honest, foreign tourists, especially in Tokyo, are a big part of the audience of any sumo match, any sumo tournament. But there's no tourists in Tokyo right now to buy tickets to go. So you're relying on Japanese people who have a lot of other things on their minds at the moment. And but now this last tournament was pretty exciting, and some new guys are winning. And I think this November tournament will easily sell out. And I think they're going to announce tickets going on sale probably this coming up Monday, which is a little less than a week away. And I think they'll get snatched up pretty quick. But yeah, I just had to make plans, and I just couldn't do it this time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Maddie says, I remember when there was an accident in the ring and a woman medic was criticized for stepping into the ring. Yeah, so even you can't
Yeah.
break the rules, even if you're going to get help from a female, right? Joan says, the tournament with no spectators. You could hear all the sounds that you could not hear before, their grunts, their feet sliding around on the surface. It was completely different way to experience sumo.
It was, and it's so funny now because they'll show highlights. You'll be watching and they'll say, "Well, this is the last time so and so wrestler fought so and so wrestler." And you'll be like, "Oh, that's got to be a year ago because look, there's people in the stands, like." And so yeah, that March tournament when there was no people, it was eerily silent and you could hear all the slappings of their belly and the grunts and the breathing hard. It was crazy. I hope we don't have to go back to that because it was an interesting one-off, but I don't necessarily want to maybe do it again. I think having the people there cheering, even if they can only hold up their towels or their signs and they can't really shout, is still better. Like I don't know if you ever watch American football, but right now I watch sometimes, and they're piping in this fake audience noise to like make it seem normal, and that's kind of even worse somehow. I don't know. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
but
crazy,
they
isn't
can
it?
still they can
Yeah.
clap and stuff. So
That's like we were talking electric cars the other day, and when
uh,
they were first designing electric cars, they said, "Oh, but we have to make it sound so people know it's coming." And then they said we can put artificial vroom vroom sounds, and then people who love that noise like it's not the same. It's
yeah,
not the same. Speaking of COVID, you have your own merch and you have very cute face masks. Can
I
you?
do. Oh, I wish I had one around. I'm
I've
sorry, I
got a
don't.
picture I can show, but can
Okay.
you talk about the designer and your merchandise?
Yeah, so I hadn't sold any new merch in over a couple years, and all my merch, my old merch, all it was text, like "Sumo's awesome," or Yokozuna, and then the kanji for Yokozuna or something. And those sold well, and people enjoyed them because you can't buy sumo shirt in America or Britain or anywhere. Um, but I was like, I'd rather really have something with a logo or art or something. And I just reached out via Twitter and via my videos, and I said, if you're an artist and you'd like to do a collab, send me some samples. And I found this one guy named Ed, and he did this design, which is now I call my logo, and it worked out great. And then I found a really talented artist in Spain named Sarah, who goes by the name Pucci, Puchi, online and in her Instagram, and she does this fantabulous, intricate art, and she designed all the face masks. And there's these cute little onigiri sumo guys, and dohyo designs where it looks you don't know what it is at first. It's all black, and then you look, oh wait, that's a sumo ring. and this really great like circular design that I bought on a T-shirt. And here I have you can see it here. I have the tote bag here
Nice.
with the sign, and it's hard to see, but this is a sumo guy and a thing of rice and the dokyo, and then we just decided to just be real minimal and just put our logo on the back, her and my name, and yeah, people love it. And the face masks have done really well, and so what happens is she and I both said, Teespring, who does the shop, get their cut, we get a cut, but we said 20% of everything we get will donate. And I also have a tip jar. I don't make any money on YouTube. I don't put any ads on my videos. I never have. But for forever, people were like, Jason, I want to buy you a beer. I just enjoy watching. Can I, buy you dinner or whatever? And I said, well, okay. So people said, well, just put up, a tip jar on PayPal and people can throw you a couple bucks, $5, $10. And people do, which is wonderful. And I said, but I don't, I've got a good job. I'm living in a nice place. I'm single. I don't have kids. So I said, you know what? Let me donate some of this money. And so every other month I try to send $50 or $75 from, the merch sales and the tips, and just send it to people. You remember back at the beginning of 2020 when we thought the fires in Australia were going to be the biggest news of the year, So I sent money to help the koalas, and then, sometimes it's something that's close to me, sometimes it's an international. Doctors Without Borders was a recent one, Parkinson's disease, Children's Hospital in LA, and people send me suggestions. Clean water was a suggestion from a fan, and so I found this great charity that helps people get clean water. So we try to do that too.
That's awesome. I love
Yeah.
that. It's a great idea and really cool stuff. I love the t-shirts and the cups and the face masks, of course, useful for
Yeah.
everyone right now. And the fact that you're giving back to communities in need helps a lot. Joan says, want. Thank you, Joan. So, what is the website for your merch again?
I can send it to you. It's
We
basically
can put it below.
okay, yeah, it's Teespring and then I
Teespring.
think Jason's Sumo shirts or something like that.
So
I don't
TTEE spring?
That's right.
Yeah.
Spring. And
.com
then
and then Jason Sumo. If you search, you can find it,
if you
right?
search Jason Sumo, I bet you'll find it.
And we'll
Yeah.
put the link below after.
Okay.
If I forget, remind me.
All right.
Some interesting things that I came across going back to Hakuho. He was a champion for so long. NHK was talking about how he adapted his style over
Mm,
the years, changed the way that he wrestled. And you were talking about when people know the other person's style, of
mm.
course, you have that advantage. So, you think that was one of the reasons he became so good at the sport? Adaptability?
Adaptability, absolutely. He just has, he ticks every box. He's incredibly athletic. He's a good basketball player. He studies. He watches film of old sumo wrestlers from days gone by and more recent, like greats like Chiono Fuji and Akebono and of course Asashoru and contemporaries. And he's smart and he takes it very seriously, and he almost never, if you look at his day by day tournament stats, he almost never loses back to back days. He almost never loses twice to an opponent in a row. Things like that. Somebody will tell me down in the description, But what about so and so? There's always an exception, so I
Do you
apologize.
think he's your favorite? Joan is asking, who's your favorite wrestler?
My favorite wrestler of all time is another Mongolian named Haruma Fuji, and Haruma Fuji was a small guy. When I came to Japan, I was also quote unquote smaller. Um, so he was 183 centimeters. I'm 181 centimeters. He weighed about 130 kg. Back then, I weighed about 125 kg, and I was like, wow, this guy's like my size, and he's taking on these much bigger dudes. And so I just sort of started to root for him. He had a different name back then. His name was Ama. He changed it when he became an Ozeki. And he was just smaller and scrappy and had a lot of technique and strategy. And he would pick people's legs up, and he had all this kind of, he was really fast. And so I just started to root for him and his journey, and he became a Yokozuna. And he had some great matches against Hakuho in his rivalry. And he unfortunately had to retire a few years ago, so I don't get to root for him anymore. And so now the other guy I root for and I have for a long time is, like I said, I was first uh, placed in Shimane-ken, and there's one wrestler from Shimane-ken, and his name is Okunoumi. And it's based on the fact that he's from these islands off the coast of Shimane named the Oki Islands. And so uh, I've just always rooted for him, and he's been a yo-yo up and down, the Banzuke and the rank listings. And he recently attained a fairly high rank, and I was like, come on. And then he lost. He got like a 4 wins and 11 losses. So now he's going to go way back down. But yeah, it's fun to have someone to root for when you're watching. And I sponsor a little contest on my channel where people can pick 5 guys, and you root for a team, and whoever gets the most wins over all 5 of their guys, I send out prizes and things like that from Japan, and that's fun.
That's really fun. I
Yeah.
saw NHK has a list of wrestlers to watch, and they say Asanoyama,
Yeah.
Takakeisho, Shodai, and Mita Keumi,
Okay.
as well as Daieisho and Terunofuji.
Okay. That might be a basho or so ago, but yeah. Um, yeah, there's some younger guys coming up. Asanuyama, Takakeisho. These are guys. Takakeisho is really young. I want to say he's like 22, 23. Asanuyama is probably 25-ish. Um, Asanuyama is probably going to be the next Yokozuna if he plays his cards right. We just had a guy promoted to Ozeki, the second highest rank. His name is Shodai, and he's interesting in that he didn't adopt a sumo name, if you will, a ring name, a shikona. He uses his own real name, Shodai. That's his real Japanese name, and he's going to keep it. Um, and so we've got some younger guys coming up. We've had some veterans that were in Ozeki and lost, and you can get demoted in sumo, and they have, but they're still sort of in the top division. Guys like Kodo Shogiku, Tochinoshin, Takayasu. So we've got some really talented people in the top division now, along with these guys. That the big talk of the last tournament was this guy named Tobizaru, whose name means flying monkey, which is a lot of fun. Um, and he was way down, like Maegashira rank, so in the top division, but all the way down at like 17 or 14 or something. But he got the second best amount of wins in the whole tournament and almost was going to win the whole U show in his debut time, his very first rookie tournament. And he lost out on kind of the last couple days. But yeah, I mean, there's always a new story and something exciting. You like it when the guys like Hakuho come and wrestle well and are fighting and really into the thick of it. But I think there's enough new talent and other people to watch that sumo will keep going. It's they'll find somebody new, and Hakuho and Kakeru are both, I think, over 35, so they're both going to retire fairly soon.
Wow, interesting. So
Yeah.
the younger guys, they what kind of mistakes would someone who's not like comfortable in the ring, like what is the advantage of the older wrestlers? Is it just time wrestling, or is it because the younger guys are stronger and they have less injuries, right? Like how
Yeah.
it's interesting balance, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sure. I mean, there was a time where Hakuho, especially, he went on a win streak that broke the modern record and almost challenged this record by a guy named Futabayama from way back in, like the 1920s, 63 consecutive wins. And he didn't miss it by many. And he was young, he was healthy, he was, everything was working on all cylinders back then. And now he's older, and you start to get the aches and pains and all the rest. So, yeah, not getting injured is huge, like in any sport. And um, having the resiliency to come back after you are injured, which we've seen some great examples of that. Terano Fuji, you mentioned, is a Mongolian who was an Ozeki, went all the way down to one of the bottom divisions, and then has now come all the way back up despite having a really bad. He has diabetes, and he had a knee injury and all this stuff. So, yeah, I mean, definitely ring sense, skills in the ring, a skill set that includes lots of different technique. The older guys have all of those things, and the young guys have passion and drive, and the desire to prove themselves. But that's going to be it's tough. It's tough to make it. It's 15 days. You got to go out there and face a new guy every day, and when you've done it a lot, you can get used to it and know what to expect. And when you're young and fresh, you certainly have a lot of enthusiasm, but you got to learn the ropes. So yeah.
Yeah. Joan says Taka no Yama was our favorite for a long time. We're now big fans of Ishiura and Enho.
Of course. So Enho is sort of the well, how do I want to say this without making Enho fans mad? He's kind of the Justin Bieber of sumo. He's a young, fresh face, and he's a small guy. He's 169 centimeters, so I don't know what that is in feet and inches, maybe 5'6" or something. Uh, and he's slender. He's under 100 kg, which is really not big for a sumo wrestler, especially in the top division. I think in the last term he weighed in at 92 kg, but he's scrappy. He gets under guys, he goes for the leg, he goes for interesting throws, and people just love to watch him wrestle. He's also really handsome, which doesn't hurt with the ladies. He's gotten beer commercials and endorsements, and he's not. His build is more like almost like a really good bodybuilder than like a fat, guy. So I think a lot of women enjoy watching him, and he has definitely got a huge fan base right now. And he is being tutored. He's under the tutelage of Hakuho because they're in the same stable. So he's getting the best sparring partner in the game. But unfortunately, his size, excuse me, will always restrict his ability to rise up through the ranks because at the end of the day, to really be a top level wrestler, you have to have, the height and the weight to throw the other guys around, and he just never will. But to be entertaining and to watch and to be involved and stuff, his matches always get a lot of replays on NHK, and people, just love to cheer for him. So that's great to have people like that in the sport.
That's great. I'm showing pictures from bigsumofan.com right now. It seems like you guys have a good collaborative communication back and forth.
Yeah, yeah. So Robert, he just reached out and was making these bumper stickers that said sumo on them. He's like, "Can I send you a few?" And I was like, "Sure." And and so after that, he started to import more and more goods because there's not a whole lot of places you can buy anything related to sumo if you don't live in Japan. And you can try Yahoo auctions if you live outside and use a sender service, but you kind of have to be able to speak a little bit of Japanese to navigate. And so he's been able to import the Banzuke, the illustrated Banzuke that you saw with the Keisho Mawashi, T-shirts, buttons, pins, magnets, blah, blah, blah. The calendar once a year, which is a wonderful thing they put out. And so I just bought him recently at the Japanese post office. They put these amazing postage stamps with sumo-related stuff on them. And so I went to my local post office and bought him 8 sheets and sent them to him. And then, if somebody wins the contest and they live in America or Canada, I'll say, okay, well, go pick something out from Robert's site. I've got some credit there. you can spend this much, and he'll mail it to you, and it's all not. I don't even have to do anything. It's wonderful, and he's got such a great range of just fun stuff. And so yeah, so it's great to have people that partner up with me like that. I don't really ever have sponsors. You know how some people say, buy this wallet or buy these glasses or something to help my YouTube video. I've never really done that, but buy sumo tickets because that's the guy I use to buy my tickets, Robert, and a few other people, and then I sell my own little bit of T-shirts and whatnot. But yeah, mostly the channel just chugs along on its own steam, so I'm really happy about that.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joan is asking about tickets. Can Jason talk about buying day of tickets for those who miss out on reserve tickets? Is it still possible given COVID-19?
Oh, given COVID? That's an interesting question, Joan. I honestly cannot say 100% that I'm sure that I know. In the old system, it sounds like she knows this. What would happen is they would save about 200 seats, and those are the seats in like the second balcony, single seats. They're generally 3,000 yen, so you're kind of sitting up at the top, in the back a little bit. But if the bus show is sold out and you really want to go, you could line up at about 6:30, 7 a.m. And I think the tickets would go on sale at like 8 or 9 a.m. And it was kind of first come, first serve, and you could still get in. Whether they're still doing that now, I doubt it because things. Like you would have to socially distance in line, and then which of the seats are they going to sell, and blah blah blah. But maybe in the November one they would because they're going to let more people in. But yeah, I honestly don't know. You'd have to try to contact someone and find out.
Yeah, good question though.
Yeah.
I came across a really interesting tweet thread that you had talking about the money envelopes, and it made me
Uh,
question how much money can sumo wrestlers make? Do they make a living? Do they
they
have
do.
their cost of livings covered and they make a little bit, or how does it work?
Right. So, like I said a little bit before, if you're lower tier division, you're kind of an indentured servant. You're an assistant to a higher ranked wrestler in your stable, and your room and board is paid for. You live at the stable. There's a coach. Generally, his wife is the woman who runs the stable, cooks the meals, or organizes the cooking of the meals, the laundry. But if you've ever had or been to a Japanese school or had children that go, you know that they kind of clean their own school and they're very much responsible. In elementary school, sometimes they're dishing out their own kyushoku, and stuff, school lunch. So I think the sumo, it's a lot like that. Like they make the big chanko nabe and set it down in front of the senior wrestlers, and they all go at it, and then they get to eat last. And and then as you move up, you get privileges. And by the time you're in the top division, especially if you're like an Ozeki or Yokozuna, you've moved out, you have your own apartment now, you can get married, you can have a life. But the younger guys, especially as they're learning, um, they don't get a salary. They probably get a stipend from their sumo. But one way they can make money is through sponsors, and they'll have sponsors who literally are like a little group that will sponsor them and come to their matches and hold up towels and buy them things when they need it. And oh, you need new tennis shoes, okay, we'll buy them for you, or whatever. It can be that simple. And then the sponsors, NHK is state run broadcast, so there's no commercials on NHK TV. So they hold up little banners and they walk around the ring before some of the big matches that they know a lot of people want to watch, and it'll say, the name of their website or their product or even McDonald's or whatever. And to do that, you have to pay money to the wrestling association, and half of it goes to them and half of it goes to the wrestler. And they get about 7 mon in each envelope, and then some of that goes into a fund to pay for their income taxes and things like that, and then some of it's just money that they get to spend and save. um, and so in a big match there could be 15, 20, 30 of those envelopes, so it can be quite a nice little payday if you are a lower rank wrestler and you beat a high rank guy toward the end of the day, and you get all those envelopes. Um, so yeah, if you're in the top tier divisions, the Jurio division or the Makuuchi division, the top two in the sport, then you get a salary, you get assistance, you get kimono with your name on it. You know, you get a little pillow to sit on when you're sitting on the ringside and somebody brings it out for you. You know, people hand you, you know, you don't do anything for yourself anymore. You're pampered. Uh, and then of course the top guys, you know, they have 5 assistants and, you know, they have entourages and et cetera, et cetera. They're called skibito. And, yeah, you know, it's just it's all part and parcel of the fun of the sport, you know, watching their whole little entourage and
Yeah, that's
yeah,
really interesting.
they make a
Uh,
lot of money in salary and in sponsorships.
Quick question from Suyog Ikankar. Thank you for joining. He says from India.
Oh,
And
hello.
are you in Japan? Yes, we are. Is this stream live? Yes, it is. Is it recorded? It is recorded, but we are live right now. So thank you for joining. He says NHK is a big thing. Yeah, even in India. That's wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they have NHK World, and they have a website, and they have English language play-by-play, like I mentioned, every day from 4 to 6 p.m. And those guys are well informed and do a good job. And I've been able to make friends with one of the guys that goes on and does color commentary. His name's John, and you know, it's just unfortunate that they haven't quite kind of caught up with the streaming, you know, whatever times, and they've had some fits and starts trying to have sumo be accessible to people outside of Japan, and I'm sure there's copyright and all kinds of things involved, and how much they should charge. Like if let's say you want to subscribe to a basho, at one point they were charging $150, which is like $10 a day. It was ridiculous. You know, no one's going to pay that. And so they need to think about the model, and NHK World do a nice little clip show, where they highlight, you know, they cut down all the matches and put up highlights. But it oddly, like, it only shows 3 times and it's particular times of the day, and they don't put it on YouTube, and they're not taking advantage of all the 21st century has to offer, in my opinion, quite yet,
Yeah.
which is why my channel exists and still does well, you know.
So, can you explain like what you do on your channel? How would you commentate or narrate?
Sure. So mainly what I do is I used to get home and you know, like I said, from school, and the top division had already begun, and so I would just sort of sit down and say, okay, well, I'll just film the top 5 or 6 matches of the day. And that still sort of persists till now. Now I have a DVR and I can film it, tape it rather, and replay it and be more selective. I always put up Enho's matches, for example. We were just talking about him because he gets a lot of views. Um, but yeah, I kind of curate. I pick, okay, this is an important match because if this guy beats this guy, or I'll put up, oh, well, this guy's popular, or this guy needs this win to stay at his rank, or he'll get demoted. And I try to do it like that because I can't show all 20 matches every day. It would take too long, and I don't have that kind of time. So I point my iPad at my television, and you get the full HD, you know, of my TV live, and you get my live. I sit behind it and just talk, and I shut up and I turn on the NHK play-by-play guys, and they speak in English. So it's really one of the few channels that present sumo in English. And so if you're new to the sport, or you just don't speak Japanese, but you've been watching it for a while, it's one of the few places you can go on YouTube and uh, watch and enjoy in English and learn. I pepper it with Japanese words, etc., of course. But yeah, and people seem to enjoy my talking and my honest reactions and cheering and cursing and all the other things I do when somebody wins that I like and somebody doesn't win that I don't like or whatever. But
And
I'm a fan.
do you throw your zabuton? Do you throw
No, it's
your
funny you
pillow?
mentioned that because Robert that big sumo fan is coming up with like a little mini Zabuton that
I
you can
saw
throw at the
that.
TV.
Yeah, that's
I
so
haven't seen
cute.
one yet. He's gonna send me one, he said.
Let me see if I have a picture. I saw those. I saw those on his shop, and I thought, what a good idea. I love
Yeah.
so many of his items. The postage stamps, like you said, the posters, the trading cards. I think trading cards are a really big deal in America right now for a bunch of sports. So it's
Oh
nice to
yeah,
see.
I am actually I've had this one that I've had here for a little while, and you're gonna get glare. But there's Tochinoshin. He's the guy from Georgia, and this is an authentic sign. This is his signature, and they only made 60 of these in this batch, so it's
Wow.
numbered. So this would probably on Yahoo auction would go for about a mon, and I just got it out of a pack. So I've kept it, all safe, and I'm going to give it away on the channel probably in 2021. I've been waiting for him to win a tournament and be like, okay, now let's celebrate. I'll give this away or something. But he hasn't been doing so well lately. But yeah, I collect some of the cards too, and they're a lot of fun. So
Yeah, that's great. And I
yeah.
saw on BigSumo.com, he's got retro cards as well, not just the new wrestlers, but he's
Oh
got
yeah, yeah. They go
Konishiki
back.
and other stuff
Yeah,
too, right?
yeah.
Well, that's our hour. We're finished. Thank you
Oh,
so
okay.
much. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you everybody for all your wonderful questions and comments. And check out Jason's channel, Jason's All
Please do.
Sumo channel.
Thanks for
And
talking, and I hope some of you guys come by and watch some sumo. The next boss show starts November 8th, and it goes to the 22nd, and I will have videos up every day from the 8th to the 22nd.
fantastic. And you can catch it live as it happens in Japan. I love
That's
that.
right.
Thank you so much, Jason. Thanks,
All right.
everybody. Have a good night.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.